the next thing that we want to talk about is how do we leverage the diagram framework? Much of what we do in systems engineering, we visualize graphically. Yes, there's an information model behind the scenes, but I don't want to look at giant lists of data. I don't want to look at giant tables of data. So how do I leverage this diagram framework that GENESYS offers? So again, we are in fast food. And so what I want to do is navigate to and just explore this framework. This time, let's click down to the function class and let's look at some of the functions in our system. And let's look at operate fast food restaurant. First, again, the tabs along the bottom reinforce the fact that I might want to visualize this information from many different viewpoints. Same information, different viewpoint, different communication or analysis purpose. I don't have to look at the windows here, the graphics here. I could open them as separate windows. To do that, from the views ribbon, I select and I have the same set of views. These two operate exactly the same. It's just the matter of, do you want it in the same tab so that you don't navigate out, or do you want it in a separate window, maybe to maximize the screen space? I'm going to click activity and open mine in a separate window. You can open yours in the tab. So our activity diagram will open. And let's navigate here. The first thing actually I'm going to point to is this viewport in the upper right-hand corner. This allows me to navigate around a diagram, particularly as diagrams get very large. Think of it as a bird's eye view. The button in the lower corner allows me to zoom in and out, so I can figure out how I wish to place it. Now, we also have navigation and zoom controls over here on the left in this ghosted control. I personally find that I use the bird's eye view, the viewport. In fact, sometimes I even toggle off the control in the upper corner. When we're in a diagram, we've got two primary ribbons available to us. We have the views ribbon that allows us to open a view on a selected object. And we have the diagram ribbon. The diagram ribbon allows us to save the diagram off. It allows us to do layout type commands. It allows us to do manipulation type commands. The primary areas that you will use on a diagram are the diagram ribbon for manipulation, but then down the right-hand side, the insert tab. Every diagram is presented in the language of the diagram with building blocks that have meaning for that diagram. This allows you to visually construct your model. And if we look at the insert tab, we see four different things that we can add. The first are those constructs in the language of a diagram. In the case of an EFFBD, an activity diagram, I can add a parallel, I can add a select, I can add a loop, I can add outputs. The second is display utilities. Effectively think of this as shapes and images. I may wish to add a note to a diagram. I can just drag the note out there. It will ask me to put in my text. I will call this my first note, hit OK. And so this is graphical content. It doesn't have any semantic meaning, but it helps the communication value of the diagram. Same thing if you wanted to add a shape. The third tab, called the Key Entities folder, shows the key concepts on this type of diagram. So rather than seeing all entities in the database, I see the primary concepts that are reflected here. I'm looking at an activity diagram, so those are functions and items, exit and domain sets. If I was looking at a flow internal block diagram, I would be looking at components, ports, and links, because I would be in the physical space, the implementation space. I can use this because I could then drag drop content onto the diagram to construct it. The fourth icon gives me access to the entire project repository. The purpose here is I often want to use a diagram to establish relationships that have nothing to do with the diagram. I'm just working in the diagram and I want to use this diagram to establish traceability. Okay, I could navigate down. I could select my requirements, and I could drag drop on to establish that traceability. The other thing to be aware of in the diagram framework is the Properties tab. So if I switch from the Insert tab to the Properties tab, if nothing is selected, let me click in the background. If nothing is selected, then I have the properties for the diagram itself. So these are some high-level settings. I could toggle the frame on and off. I could change the node template for a given diagram. I could change settings for individual things. So for example, here, right now, my node template for these functions is showing the name and the allocation. Maybe I'm communicating to an audience where the allocation will confuse. That's fine. In the node defaults, I can change the template, and I can pick from one of these existing ones. In the utilities, you can create your own. I'll select name. It simplifies the diagram. If I select a single or multiple entities, it doesn't matter, then I'm looking at the properties for that node itself or a given line. What can you do here? You can change the colors, so let's make this kind of a cyanish color because I want to draw attention to it. I could manually change the sizing here if I so chose, but more often than not, we do those kind of operations on the diagram itself. When you start working with the diagrams in Genesys, it's going to feel a lot like PowerPoint and Visio. So select a diagram, you can do your resizing here. You see the blue rulers pop up for alignment purposes, for sizing purposes, etc. So I tend to do most of my manipulation direct using these rulers, or let's do this. I'm going to make him very small for a second. The other thing that I will do quite frequently is use the ribbon up here to auto size a node or reset because I want a very standard type of view. We'll come back to building a diagram later, but remember the Insert tab gives you the control over building. Properties allows you to set diagram level properties or node level properties, whatever selected. And then you've got your viewport up here. I'm going to close this diagram and open one other diagram just for illustration purposes. I want to now navigate down in my class list. I'm going to select document, and we've got one source document for our fast food. I'm going to select it and click on the hierarchy diagram. Now I'm clicking on the hierarchy diagram for a couple reasons. First, in this list under insert, we don't see constructs, we don't see key entities. And that's because the hierarchy diagram doesn't have any implicit semantic meaning. It's a visual query. You give it a relationship set and it builds a tree. Same thing is true for the spider diagram. But we'll see that my traceability stops here at 3 levels. I can change my properties. I'm going to go to 9 levels. I know that will more than take care of it. And the other thing that I wanted to show here is for a given node, so I could select a given node, or I'm going to do a Control A to select all nodes, I can toggle over to the graphical view. I have not associated a custom graphic with any of these nodes, so I'm just getting a graphical view. Requirements are bullseyes, risks are diamonds here or triangles, physical implementation are servers, functions are gears. So you can tailor your graphics, your diagrams, either with graphics or nodes and lines, whatever serves your purpose. And with that, we've completed our orientation to the diagramming framework.